Over the past year, we've covered a lot on the Flood Channel. We've shown you video of the damage caused by flooding, explained the importance of flood safety, and given you tips on protecting the environment. So in this episode, we're going to take a look back at some of those memorable stories. Hello, I'm Betty Hollister, and welcome to another edition of the Flood Channel. Many residents in Las Vegas have experienced the impacts of the declining economy firsthand. Our city's unemployment rate remains high, and more families are struggling to make ends meet. During these difficult times, the district is doing its best to put people to work. That's because not only do detention basins and channels help protect the county from flooding, but construction of these projects helps put people to work. Let's take a look back at Mayor Oscar Goodman's high hopes for a better constructed future.
Betty, like I said, a record number of projects like this one are currently underway. And for every 100 construction jobs, another 75 jobs are created outside the industry. For the next few months, 26 projects at approximately $240 million should all be under construction. And no one in Southern Nevada knows more about how important this is for the local economy than His Honor Mayor Oscar Goodman.
We did a survey through UNLV, 900 plus Las Vegas residents within the city itself. And we asked them what they feel Las Vegas as a city's basic function is at this point in time. What's most important to them? Would you believe that 72% of our constituents said to create jobs? So that's so important that we have public works projects like the flood district, keeping its work going in order to create jobs in the community so folks will be able to pay their mortgages, feed their families, and remain in the community here. It's critical.
These public works jobs, they're really important because they're two things. One, they're construction jobs, and a lot of the jobs that have been lost in the last 2 years have been construction jobs. Jobs lost first in residential construction. Some people were hired on for some of these large strip projects that were going on over the last 2 years. But now those projects are finished as well, so we have a real problem with high unemployment in the construction sector.
Anytime that you're constructing a major project, you're doing two things. One, you are putting people to work, and number two, you are paying wages and salaries to Nevada families. Both of those things, that is money that was generated by Nevada but stays in Nevada, which is extremely important from an economic impact standpoint. For every $1 million worth of construction activity that you have go on, generally speaking, we're looking at somewhere between 8 and 10 employees being put to work for about a 1 year period. In addition to that, about 50% of all the money that's spent comes back in terms of wages and salaries to construction employees. So, there's a direct and indirect impact. Of course, that broader impact, those secondary impacts, what people like to refer to as the ripple effect, is something larger than that number, about 1.5 times those numbers. But when we're just talking about the direct effects, you're talking about putting a lot of people to work for a substantial amount of time.
The other thing that I think is really important about public works jobs and how they're different maybe from other types of stimulus spending is their investment rather than consumption. Now, if we think of the federal stimulus package, one of the very popular programs was Cash for Clunkers, and it said, you turn in a clunker, we're going to reduce emissions from these cars, and you'll get a tax rebate on a newer, more efficient car. Cars last for a while, but essentially you consume them in about 6 or 7 years. Now, investment is something like flood control. With investment, you're going to get a return in terms of reduced damages from bad storms over 40 to 60 years from this investment. So this is the kind of thing when we think back to the 1950s and Eisenhower had the U.S. Highway Program, that's an investment that's had a continuous return. Flood control and this kind of investment will also have a continuous return. So it's a really important part of supporting the local economy and trying to bring jobs back into the valley.
I mean, I think there's lots of reasons to look at flood control, not only sort of the life safety issues, which I think are of the utmost importance, but also you're talking about securing or protecting both the property that's out there, opening up lands for development, making existing property safer. And the fact of the matter is that a master planned approach to flood control saves everybody money. If we all had to provide that flood control at the individual property level, residential and commercial, it would cost us much more than having a master planned approach to flood control facilities that essentially we all bear the burden for. Look, I don't think you look at anything that's $100 million and don't say that that has a significant impact on the community. Not only the life safety effects associated with flood control facilities, but also the general economic impacts associated with the development of land and keeping people employed and all those type of things.
Flood control is ahead of the curve. It's very important that they were aware of the Build America bonds. An article was just published in one of the governing magazines citing Las Vegas as being one of the first places to use the Build America bonds, and the flood district was right up there at the top. And we get these bonds at a very good interest rate, and we build for the future. And we have to do that, because if we stop building for the future because of the exigencies of the moment here as far as the economics are concerned, we're cheating those people who will be living here in future generations. We have to go forward at this time.
We are dealing with the most difficult economic time in Southern Nevada's history. Our unemployment rate is above 10% and is rising. Our vacancy rates in office, industrial, and retail space are all double digits and rising. Our tourism industry is facing what appears to be imminent financial restructuring in a very difficult market that's out there. These are remarkable times from an economic challenge standpoint. Do we think that this is sort of the end of Southern Nevada? Absolutely not. I mean, the reality is for us that over the long term, Southern Nevada will benefit from all of the reasons that it's benefited before.
I love the future. I think the future is going to be great. Las Vegas's infrastructure is in place. We're in good shape. Got the best hotel casinos in the world. City Center just opened up. It's phenomenal. The Golden Nugget with the new Rush Tower is a new $500 million development in our downtown. People have confidence in our community. Got the best restaurants and chefs here in the world, have the best hotel boutique shops in the world, best entertainment in the world. So we're in good shape. The rest of the world has the problem. And as soon as they get out of their doldrums and they have confidence in their dollar and they have confidence in their community, then they'll come back to Las Vegas and spend money like they used to, and we'll be on top of the world again.
Betty, these planned construction projects will create more than 2,000 jobs. And as we move closer to flash flood season, each completed project will make another part of the community safer when it rains.
That story originally aired about a year ago. Since then, the district has invested another $47 million into our construction program. With that funding, another 10 projects have been completed, which employed about 600 people. Currently, the district has just over $100 million tied up in another 13 projects under construction. 2 of those projects, Duck Creek Railroad Detention Basin and Oakey Meadows, are almost done. And another 7 projects at a cost of more than $36 million will be under construction within the next few months. After the break, a reminder about a new flood zone going into effect along the Desert Rose Golf Course.
At a time when Southern Nevada needs to be water smart, did you know taking your car to a car wash saves not only gallons of water, but also traps all that dirt and other nasty pollutants? Washing your car in the driveway allows grease, soap, and oil to flow down the street into storm drains and onto Lake Mead, our primary source for drinking water. Do your part, wash smart, a clean car and a cleaner environment. This message brought to you by the Stormwater Quality Management Committee, a program of the Regional Flood Control District.
Hi, hon. How was your day?
I was good. Nothing special. How about you?
Good. Productive.
Good.
Oh, I bought us flood insurance today.
You did what? What do you think we're made of money? I mean, what the heck? Should I just go out and buy a boat and maybe an SUV to pull it around? Oh, okay.
In Clark County, floods can strike at any time, and not just in flood zones. Flooding can cost thousands of dollars in damage, destroying your home and its contents. Do you have flood insurance?
I'm Agent Smith.
And I'm Agent Jones.
And we're busting people who pollute Clark County.
Hey, who are you guys?
Sir, please step back.
Hey, what are you doing?
Aha! Judged by your reaction, you don't like trash.
No.
Sir, this is yours. We saw you dump it out of your car.
Well, I was.
Sir, did you know trash can clog storm drains, cause flooding, and pollute Lake Mead?
Sir, is Clark County your home?
Well, yeah.
And you don't like trash in your home?
No.
Then why would you dump trash in Clark County? Don't trash Clark County. It's our home too.
Don't press your luck. Steer clear of floodwater.
FEMA is responsible for mapping flood hazards across the country. In our area, most of those maps were done about 20 years ago. So as part of our construction program, the district is constantly restudying areas to identify changes in flood zones. Let's revisit a story about the Desert Rose Golf Course, an area the district and FEMA both believe should be added to a flood zone.
The Las Vegas Wash usually just meanders through this golf course, but a recent winter storm showed these homeowners that a lot of water can flow through here. We recently restudied this section of the wash, and FEMA agrees this area should be in a flood zone. By summer 2011, some homeowners here will be required to carry flood insurance, but we believe the sooner the better. News 3's Steve Krupe recently covered a storm this past January. Let's take a look.
Most of today's rain is not soaking into the ground, it's running off into a complex network of storm drains and flood channels. This is perhaps the most dramatic of them all, the Flamingo Wash. 2 days ago, there was almost nothing flowing here. Now, tonight, it's a powerful river of runoff. This section of the Flamingo Wash actually cuts right through the middle of what is normally a golf course. That's the 10th fairway out here at the Desert Rose Golf Course, but right now it's serving as a major component of the Las Vegas flood system. And right now, the water is coming dangerously close to several backyards out here. We're standing in your backyard, and look at that. I mean, the water is right up to the edge.
Yeah, and like you see, it's also, there's a lot of debris, and you know, my wife is always wondering, what if it goes over? And my neighbor was just mentioning that a few years ago it did go over, and it was just a complete mess.
For the most part, though, the flood control system is doing its job and handling a huge amount of water. Steve Krupe, News 3.
If you live in a flood zone, you have to purchase flood insurance. But one big misconception is that if you're not in a flood zone, you'll never be flooded. That's not the case. So let's find out more.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency publishes flood hazard maps. If you're in one of these flood hazard zones, if your home is, you have to buy flood insurance. We have been maintaining these maps or requesting changes to the maps for many years, since 1992, to go with our flood control projects, to show the reduction in flood hazard that occurs because of our flood control projects being built. Sometimes we have to restudy areas when we think there's a bigger risk than what FEMA originally estimated. Now, FEMA did their studies initially for the communities back in the late 70s. If you think about the late 70s, there weren't even cell phones back then. Technology has changed, and how we analyze these flood hazards has also changed. We have a lot more computing capacity now, and we can look at many different scenarios as we see them actually occur in nature. We can say, boy, if that happened here, this flood hazard might be worse than what's shown on this map. Another thing we're doing with the current remapping effort is, since Hurricane Katrina, a lot of attention has been drawn nationally to the protection provided by levees and how well those are maintained and how much we can count on them. We have a few levees in Clark County, and FEMA has asked us to give them all of the engineering data to say, yes, they are providing the amount of protection that they're getting credit for on the flood maps.
Well, back in 1999 when the 100-year flood came, this was a really scary area. The water completely came over the banks. It was several feet deep outside of the wash. A lot of the construction in this area on the other side of the wash didn't even exist at the time, so there was open field for the water at least to drain to, and we still had water lapping up against the back of our homes here.
On the Las Vegas Wash, when FEMA originally mapped it, they came up with a 100-year or 1% flow rate based on the maximum from 3 different watersheds. Whichever watershed discharged the highest amount, that was going to be the flow rate downstream. A watershed is an area where when it rains, all that water is going to collect and flow out of one point. The boundaries of a watershed are defined by the topography, the highs and lows in the land. So if a raindrop fell on this side in this watershed, it's going to flow to this point. If it falls on this side of that line or high point, it's going to flow to this point over here. Well, now we have all this computing capacity, and we thought, what happens if you have a big storm over portions of all three of those watersheds? What would happen? It'd be like you take a big jug, a gallon jug, and pour it once, or you take a 2-liter bottle and pour it, or a 16-ounce bottle and pour it. Well, the gallon jug is going to pour the most, but if you pour them all three at the same time, you're going to get a lot more than just that one gallon jug. So that's the theory behind why we decided to restudy the Las Vegas Wash. When FEMA originally issued the maps for the Las Vegas Wash, they thought the floodplain was about this wide. Well, we think it's wider, and even though that doesn't show on a map right now, we think that hazard exists today. So that's why we're trying to get information out to the people that are going to be affected by the map change, that buying flood insurance now before they're actually in a flood zone to protect themselves from a flood hazard that we think exists today is smart. It'll save them money initially and in the long run as well. And they'll be providing that protection to their most important investment, their home.
Well, over here in our residential area, we received information from the flood district probably about 6 months ago now, letting us know that we're going to be reclassified here as flood zone. And after experiencing the floods in '99, I of course acted immediately and got with my insurance agent and got flood insurance on my home. The big advantage getting it now, of course, is getting it at the non-required flood zone rates, as opposed to 6 months, a year from now when we're officially a flood zone and the rates are going to be up to 10 times the amount they are now.
Anyone can purchase flood insurance, whether they've had a flood or not. And if you are in a neighborhood that you are adjacent to a wash or a drainage ditch or a drainage area, a retention basin, or below a retention basin, you are at a higher risk for having a flood occur in your home. As little as 2 inches of water can cause $20,000 of damage in any one home. And it doesn't matter what type of home you have. Once the water has invaded your home, you're looking at carpet, your tile, it's going to buckle wood floors, your cabinetry, all of your personal items are going to be damaged. And if they're damaged, you're going to have to replace this because there is no coverage under a home policy. There's a 30-day waiting period with homes that are not in an emergency flood zone A area. Those 30-day waiting period basically means if you wrote it on March 1st, your first day of coverage would be April 1st. So you can't call up your agent or you can't call up me and say, I need to put the coverage on today. The floodwaters are almost over the wall. It's too late. You have to purchase this coverage beforehand. For as low as $300 a year, you can get coverage. Things that are not covered that most people think are covered under a flood policy are, one, they think that their ATVs or their boats or their jet skis are going to be covered, and they are not. It is specifically for your home. Brick walls are not covered, your landscaping isn't covered. That is all a risk, and they have 2 deductibles. One is for contents, one is for the structure of the home. Everyone should have this coverage, whether you've been flooded or not flooded. Either way, under a preferred policy, if you purchase it now and get grandfathered in, you get a better rate than if you wait until it is in a flood zone A. And it is coming, it will happen.
I've heard a statistic quoted by FEMA that 25% of flood claims come from areas outside of special flood hazard areas. So it's important to look around your house, look around your neighborhood. Think about the last time it rained and flooded. Did the water come anywhere near your house? How does your subdivision drain? Are you near a very large water course? Maybe you even know the name of that water course. And if you do, and you're not in a flood zone, you might be close to the point where having flood insurance, even though you're not in a flood zone, would be a good idea.
All right, well, receiving that notification, like I said, about 6 months ago from the flood district, it was a great peace of mind to know that the flood district is looking out for the residents and letting us know that these classifications are changing, know that we need to be protected by insurance to make sure that we're not in harm's way. So having that insurance really does add peace of mind and really does make it a more comfortable situation. Even though you know you may lose everything, quote unquote, at least you know it's going to be replaced monetarily.
It takes 30 days for a flood insurance policy to take effect. So if you think your home could be at risk for flooding, make a call to your insurance agent now.
Another letter to notify homeowners about the flood zone change will go out just before flash flood season. This will be the third time the district has attempted to notify residents. We want to make sure that everyone knows about the flood zone change and can purchase flood insurance prior to the maps going into effect. Coming up, a look at the history of flooding in our community.
See that clogged storm drain? Something like that, when it rains, will cause water to back up and flood our streets. Hello, Regional Flood Control District. I'd like to report a clogged storm drain. City and county employees are working hard to keep your storm drains clean. If you spot a clogged storm drain, call and report it.
Help protect the environment by keeping our drains and washes clean. Report clogged storm drains by calling 685-0000.
Seriously, the ref botched that call. You ruined the game.
I know, baby.
Babe, it's my bonus check. You know what this means.
I do know what this means. Oh my God, new wardrobe. I can get
Oh, come on, you know. We can buy flood insurance. Yes!
In Clark County, floods can strike at any time, and not just in flood zones. Flooding can cost thousands of dollars in damage, destroying your home and its contents. Do you have flood insurance?
Hi, I'm Terry Fader. You know, living in the desert, you may not realize it, but 6 inches of water can knock you off your feet. I can knock you off your feet too, honey. And 18 inches of water can make a car float. You don't need root beer and ice cream to make a car float? This is serious, Vicky. It's flash flood season and people need to know the facts. The fact is, you can have a lot of fun in a car, but don't be stupid. Turn around, don't drown.
The National Weather Service and the Regional Flood Control District remind you to stay safe this flash flood season.
Don't press your luck. Steer clear of floodwater.
This past year on the Flood Channel, we've shown you just how devastating floodwater can be. In this next story, we took a look at the history of flooding in Clark County.
Flooding in southern Nevada. Perhaps you've seen it on television, read about it in the newspaper, or maybe even experienced it firsthand. But many residents here are new to the area and unaware of how life-threatening floods can be. Recorded reports about dangerous floods in the community date back to 1905, which is the first year a newspaper was published in southern Nevada. Back then, when storms led to excessive flooding, they crippled communication and telegraph wires and shut down roads and railroad tracks, making travel almost impossible. From those first published accounts to present day, southern Nevada has experienced scores of storms that had devastating impacts to families, their homes, and businesses. A major storm in 1949 was dubbed by the newspaper as one of the worst in history, causing flooding from Las Vegas to 90 miles north in Mesquite. Another devastating storm was recorded in 1975 as floodwaters slammed into the valley, bringing death and destruction. More than 300 cars at Caesar's Palace were submerged, many piled on top of each other by the power of the floodwater, while others were found miles downstream from the Strip. Storms in the early 80s resulted in several deaths, millions of dollars in damages, and the creation of the Regional Flood Control District in 1985. More recently, in 1999, a 100-year storm left many parts of the valley looking like raging rivers. More than 150 people were rescued by emergency crews.
and the water immediately started filling the house. And just the initial reaction of walking into your home and finding everything caked in mud, water up the sides of the walls, and it took my breath away to see all the damage, and you don't know what to do. You don't know where to start. You don't know how to react. I remember just standing there and crying for a couple hours before my adrenaline kicked in and said, I've got to start getting stuff out of the mud. Very first thing I did was call my insurance company. I assumed that my homeowner's insurance was going to cover it. Wrong. I still, the whole time, look back and think, if I had only had the insurance, if I had only had the wherewithal to take out flood insurance. It was inexpensive, and it would have saved me $50,000. I didn't let my daughter come home for 4 days because her room was destroyed. She stayed away. I couldn't let her come home and see what had been destroyed in her room.
Stories like that remind us of the power of floodwater. To check out other Flood Channel episodes, log on to our website at regionalflood.org. You can also find us on Facebook. For all of us here at the Flood Channel, I'm Betty Hollister, and remember to always be flood safe.